Hey there everybody, Seja here, and just hanging out in my library this afternoon here, and I was thinking about something today that I wanted to share with all of you that I think might provide some helpful clarity and insights for you all in terms of your own healing journey, as well as if for those of you that are currently working with clients or want to in the future. I think this is something that we should all keep track of as herbalists and as holistic health practitioners. And this might be a shock, this might seem a little controversial, or might straight up be controversial, and maybe I'm going to rock the boat a little bit here. But I think this is something that's really important to look at, and this is stop taking stuff for 6 weeks, right? And by stop taking stuff, I mean stop taking your herbs, stop taking your vitamins, stop taking your minerals, stop taking your supplements, stop taking your superfoods, and take 6 weeks completely off from everything. Why do I say this? Now, before I get into why I'm saying this, I need to give a disclaimer here. So if you are on doctor's orders, if you have a disease, if you are being treated for something very specific, you're on a very particular protocol, that's been prescribed to you by an ND or by a clinical herbalist or by an acupuncturist or whatever it is, please, by all means, do not stop, right? Definitely am not trying to get in the way of anyone's prescription, right? I'm really speaking more to the herbalist that gets really excited and they're constantly taking different herbs all the time, or I'm speaking to kind of what we see a lot in the more might I say the kind of the supplement industry consumer. And I worked in the supplement industry for a number of years, and one thing that was very common that I would see is, people walk into a supplement shop and they start talking to a rep, and pretty soon, they've got a basket load full of hundreds of dollars of really expensive supplements, and they take it all home and they're popping 15, 20 tablets and capsules 3 times a day and taking all this stuff, and they don't even know why they're taking it, right? And what made me think of this was that, I had a client that was like that. Well, I've had a number of clients that are like this, but there was one in particular where this person was literally spending, I think it was probably close to $200, $250 a month on supplements. And, we're talking 15 different kinds of bottles of things. And she didn't even really know what half of it was, not what half of it was, but why she was taking it. And to me, this is like a red flag, and for a couple of reasons. One, I think when we start taking a whole bunch of stuff all at once, it can be a little bit overwhelming for our bodies. So, from a vitalist perspective, we have a certain degree of vital force in the body. We've got a certain level of vitality, and that vitality is going towards, maintaining optimal physiological function, digesting food, processing things in the body. And if we start taking a whole bunch of different vitamins and minerals and supplements and superfoods and herbs, I just, in my personal opinion, I think it can actually really start to overwhelm our body, and I think it can potentially start to deplete the vital force to a certain regard. I think it can be a little bit confusing for our body, especially if we're taking all this stuff and maybe some of it's kind of contradictory a little bit. So there's that aspect of it. 2, it can be very expensive. 3, I think it's very important to give our bodies time to integrate the healing that we've achieved through a certain protocol or regime. So, if you're working on, healing something within yourself, and you start working with a certain protocol, I think it's good to keep that protocol simple, right? When I administer herbs and things to people, I usually give them about 2 things, right? Maybe I give them a spagyric formula, and then usually there's a tea. Maybe I'll give a third formula if they really need it. but my preference is only 2 things. And I think there's something in simplicity of protocols that's very important. A, it increases compliance because it's easy for people to do. B, I think it's a little easier for the body to deal with just a couple things at a time. And when you're working on, and it's like, it's easy for people on a healing path to want to address everything all at once, right? So it's like, well, I'm going to take this for this thing and that for that thing and this for this thing and that for that thing, and end up taking all these things trying to heal everything all at once. And I think it's a lot better to maybe pick 1 or 2 of those things and gradually just go deep with a couple different formulas or remedies or supplements or whatever type of remedy you like to work with, and you just address a couple things at a time. And then once you've healed that, once you've taken care of that, once you feel better, to not just jump into the next thing, right? To get into like, okay, now I'm going to do all this and work on this thing, and now I'm going to do that and work on that thing, and pretty soon, years have gone by with this consistent ingestion of medicinal plants, of phytopharmaceuticals, of supplements and things like that. And I think it can kind of overwhelm the body over a period of time. I think our vital force wants time to integrate. So this is why I recommend people to take 6 weeks and just cut everything out. Let your body reorient itself. Let your body come back to baseline. And that baseline is going to be different now than it was before you started working with those remedies, right? Because when you work with those remedies, you're nourishing the body on a different level, you're providing macro and micronutrients, you're adjusting the tissue states of the organ systems, maybe you're incorporating new psychological and emotional dynamics, right? There's a new level that you're being taken to through these natural medicines. And I think it's very important to give your system time to adjust to that, to reorient to this new level that it's attained. And this is something that I think is very common, especially in, maybe more people that have a little bit more of a spiritual orientation. They kind of approach their spiritual path in conjunction with their healing path. And this tends to be the way I see things too, which is, to me, like spiritual growth and evolution on a soul level and healing are like 2 sides of the same leaf. It's like you can't really do one without the other. This is just my personal opinion. But I've experienced that within myself, and a lot of my students and clients have experienced that too. You probably have too, right? That when you heal yourself, you tend to reach a new level of awareness, right? Or at least a new level of self-mastery. When you go through an elimination diet and you realize that certain foods that you eat trigger a certain symptom that you have that's very uncomfortable, maybe you're crippled with headaches, or maybe you have horrible digestive problems, or maybe you have a chronic skin condition, or maybe you get really irritable and frustrated, and you eliminate that food that triggers those kinds of symptoms, well, to me, that's evolution, right? You've reached a new level of self-mastery. You've healed yourself, and you're free from that pain, from that suffering, from that discomfort. And that enables you to reach a higher level of optimal functioning. You've reached a new level, a new stage on a physiological level and on a soul level. Because to me, they're not really separate. The body is just the most fixed part of the soul, and the soul is the most volatile part of the body. But we are an organic unity unto ourselves, so they're not really separate. And so to me, when it's very common for people though that have this kind of spiritual path and healing that come together to almost get obsessed with their healing, right? To where it's like this constant wanting to fix what's broken. And it can almost turn into this pattern of thinking of constantly seeing what's wrong with us. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, oh, I've got this problem in my emotions, and I've got this problem in my mind and the way I think, and I've got these physical problems, and not to mention this childhood trauma that I've got to deal with, and the list goes on, and it's like, and it's this constant, like, almost addiction to healing. And I'm not against our healing, but I think it's very important for us to maintain balance with it. It's important to enjoy our lives, right? It's important for us to not take it so seriously that we become strict and rigid and kind of immutable and so focused on our healing that our minds can kind of get stuck on this, seeing what's wrong with us, where to me, a really profound healing happened for me when I stopped focusing on what was wrong with me and started focusing on what was right with me, right? Where it was like, yeah, how about I focus on the good and the true things and the beautiful things and the wonderful things, the things that I want to cultivate, the kind of person I want to become, the level of health and vitality I want to achieve. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to move in that direction rather than trying to fix all these things that are broken. Because it's like there's this mindset when we're trying to fix what's broken with us, that mindset kind of keeps us in that place of imbalance almost, right? That it's like, oh, I'm trying to heal this thing, I'm trying to heal this thing, I'm trying to heal this thing. Well, maybe you've already healed it. Maybe you've already healed it, but your mind is so fixated on it that you're not even aware that you've been healed, or at least that you've reached a new level in that process of healing. And this is especially true with soul level healing or spiritual level healing or our psyche, our constitution, right? A lot of things that we can see in our astrological natal chart. Some of this stuff we're going to be dealing with the rest of our lives, right? It's an ingrained pattern in the architecture of who we are. And one of the ways that one of my teachers, Pam Montgomery, who wrote this really great book called Plant Spirit Healing. She's also written a couple other books, but I really like Plant Spirit Healing. I've got it. Oh, yeah, this one right here. Plant Spirit Healing by Pam Montgomery. Can't highly recommend it enough. I really love Pam a lot. She was a very influential teacher for me, and I actually went and lived at her place in Vermont for a while and got to know her and her husband. Really good people. If you've never read that book, I highly recommend it. But she always says, time's not linear. In our Western world, we think of time like a line, but it's really like a spiral. And our healing is like that too. Maybe we've got a certain pattern and we're going through our road of life and this healing comes up and we heal this certain pattern, and then in our minds we're like, oh, I've healed it, I'm all done, I'm free. And then we go on our road of life and then we get back to that point again and that thing comes up again. But we're at a different point on that spiral, right? We're at a different stage in our growth. We've grown, we've learned more since that came up again. So we can address that challenge with the new level of awareness that we've incorporated and integrated into our lives, right? And so it's not like challenge is going to disappear. It's not like healing is going to stop. I think that's why we come onto this earth. It's not like none of that's going to stop. It's just that we get a little bit better at dealing with it. We get a little bit better at managing it. We are able to address it and approach it with a greater level of awareness. And so I know I'm kind of talking on a little bit more of an esoteric level, but I think this is really important, right? We're talking about healing, we're talking about that process of healing. And I think that mindset that I'm talking about here of fixing what's broken and constantly focusing on what's wrong and then constantly ingesting things to fix those things, I think it can kind of get us trapped in this loop where nothing's ever right. And we're constantly reaching for that next thing. Oh, maybe this wasn't the right supplement. Maybe that's the right one. Or maybe this wasn't the right, or maybe it's that one, right? And I think it can kind of overwhelm our system. So my advice that I give to a lot of my clients, that I personally have done myself, that I encourage all of my students to do, take a break, right? I took a year where I didn't take any herbs. I'm just now kind of starting to get back into taking some herbal medicines myself. And I know, it's like, I'm really putting myself out there for you here, y'all, right? It's like, what? Sage just took a year off taking herbs? What kind of herbalist is he, right? And maybe I'll get hate mail for it, but I'm just being honest, right? I always like to be honest and upfront and real with you, you know? Yeah, I didn't take any herbs for a year, because for like the 6, 7, 8 years before that, I was like flooding myself with plants all the time. And it was great, right? I learned so much about those plants. I learned so much about myself. I healed myself on all these levels, and it was amazing. And I had this insight one day where it was like, I gotta pull it back a little here. I gotta let my body adjust to all these changes that it's been going through. I gotta like give it a rest, right? I gotta let my body find its new baseline. And when I allow my body to find it, not just my body, but my mind and my heart and my spirit, once I allow it to find its new baseline, to like come back to center of like, okay, this is me, this is how my being feels and functions, not being influenced by these powerful plant intelligences, right? And so once I find that new baseline, then it's like, okay, where am I at now? Where's my focus now? What do I need to focus on for my healing? And not from a perspective of what's wrong with me, but what would I like to develop? What would I like to cultivate? How do I want to feel? What do I want my energy to be like? How do I want my mind to be? How do I want my heart to be? What do I want to understand about life and nature and healing, about myself? And then I'll take that next step with my medicines, right? I say, okay, this is where I'm focusing now on my own life and on my own health. Okay, what are the medicines that I can work with that are going to help me reach that next level? And I'm going to work with those medicines, and I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it straight. I'm going to keep it direct. And I'm going to be consistent with those medicines. And not just with those medicines, but with my prayer, with my intention, with, I'm going to meet it halfway. I always think that's important, is to not just expect the medicines to do everything for us, but to meet them halfway. Say, hey, I want you to help me with these things in my life, but I'm going to do the work, right? And I think it's really common for us to think, oh, I'm just going to take this flower essence or this spagyric or this homeopathic or whatever the remedy is, and it's going to just fix everything, and I don't really have to do anything about it. And it doesn't really work that way. Sometimes it does. If it's a micronutrient deficiency, if you have magnesium deficiency and you start taking magnesium, like, yeah, it's going to help you out, right? But you have to meet it halfway, right? You got to make the effort to take the magnesium every day. 600 milligrams, divided doses, right? Or whatever it is. And so I always say we got to meet our medicines halfway. We got to do our own work. We can't give our power away, especially when we're talking about psychological, emotional, spiritual healing. We can't give our power away to the medicines and expect them to do everything for us, right? We have to do our own internal work. And so I'm going to work with it consistently. And then once that new level of healing has been achieved, stop, right? And then let your system reorient. Get that new level of clarity, get that new level of insight, and then move to the next level. And then we're seeing this gradual, steady, solid healing and growth in our lives, and not this big mishmash of 15, 20 pills 3 times a day that's kind of like confusing our system and overwhelming our vital force, and we don't even know why we're taking all this stuff, right? It's like, well, why do we take all these things? I don't know. And that client, right, $200 a month on supplements. One of the things is that there was a lot of crossover there. So, it's like you're taking a multivitamin and a B complex. It's like, well, the multivitamin has a B complex in it. You're doubling it up, you know? And I remember saying, you know, it was like, well, is your urine bright yellow? She was like, yeah, I was kind of wondering what was going on with that. I was like, yeah, you're literally pissing out those B vitamins. Like, you're pissing your money away. And pardon the French, but it's true, like literally. And so we were able to cut her protocol over in half, right? And, you know, seeing like, okay, you're taking this adrenal formula and you're taking this other herb formula and they're pretty much the same formula. Well, just work with one of them. You don't need to double up on that. And it was interesting because actually once she cut a lot of those things out, she felt better. And that's what she told me. She was like, I think all that stuff was overwhelming my system. And I had no relationship with these things I was taking, and I didn't know what it was doing to my body, and I kind of felt like it was scrambling things up. So it was amazing. Like, sometimes the remedy is actually to simplify what you're already doing. And so I just wanted to share that with you all, you know. This is just something that was on my mind, and something that I think is an important principle for the modern client, because, you know, never before have we seen nutrients and supplements and all these herbal medicines from all over the world being made available on this scale ever before in the history of mankind. You've never been able to go to the store and buy like a multivitamin and an herb formula that has like every chi tonic rasayana adaptogen in the world in it, and all of these, you know, isolated nutrients like N-acetylcysteine and L-carnitine and pure amino acids, and like we never before has our human organism been exposed to these kinds of things. And when we're just like popping them like crazy, I question how healing that can be. And I question whether maybe it's not always as healing as we hope it will be. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing supplements. I use supplements, right? For in myself, a couple, like I'm not crazy, and I suggest some to my clients, right? Because yeah, herbs can't fix everything, right? Sometimes people need to get on some minerals. Most people need to get on some minerals. Most people usually benefit from some fish oil. Most people, at least in the Northwest, really benefit from some vitamin D. Most people really benefit from some B vitamins, right? It's like there's some simple nutrient things that a lot of people really benefit from. But there's a line, I guess is the point that I'm making. There's a line and we don't want to push it too far. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You know, I know what I'm sharing might be a little controversial. Hopefully it doesn't chap anyone's hide, but hopefully you're following what I'm saying, and ultimately it's coming from a good place for me. I'm just trying to help out. I'm just trying to help people and share a little bit of what I've been learning on my plant path, and hopefully it serves you. If you know anyone that takes a handful of supplements a day, please share this video with them. If you take a handful of supplements a day, let me know what you think. I'd be really curious to hear any of your questions, any of your comments on what I'm sharing here, and let's get a good conversation going about it. So if you're watching this anywhere but my blog, head on over to evolutionaryherbalism.com. I've got lots of free videos, mini courses, tons of content on there. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Instagram feed for daily inspiration of nature and herbal and wisdom and everything that we love to share out here at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So thanks so much for checking out this video. Leave me a comment, hit the like button, hit that share button, share with someone that you know and love. And I appreciate you taking the time to check this one out. So until next time, take care and be well.